beliefs are the real drivers. So if you believe that you're a poser, if you believe that you shouldn't be on stage, if you believe that you shouldn't be making the money that you're making, well, you're going to self-regulate back to the negative belief level. That all goes to that self-talk that's driven from experiences when we were kids. And so going back to what we teach, we understand as leaders, we always want performance outcomes. And we say, okay, we need to change our behaviors in order to perform differently.
Welcome, Model FAs. I am super excited for this podcast episode today and also excited to share with you how this all happened. So I have a number of friends over at a financial planning company called Commonwealth Financial Group. Sam Philbrook over there, Rick St. Jean, Eric, and Vinny. And they had invited me to a session that they were holding with the Pacific Institute. And a gentleman by the name of Bob Gregoire was the host over that. I think it was a 2-day session. And I was so intrigued with everything. It built on some of the personal development stuff that I've been working on over the last couple of years. But they did an amazing job in their organization as well as the delivery of the information that I wanted to learn more. So Bob was kind enough to introduce me to Mark, who is with us today. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, here we are on a podcast together. So excited to have you here. And just to introduce you, Mark, briefly. So I'm going to introduce you through your actual bio, and then I'm just going to introduce you myself as well. So Mark Panciera is an accomplished business owner, community leader, executive, and entrepreneur. Applying his personal formula for personal achievement, Mark has distinguished himself as an advisor to a diversified group of clients in a variety of industries. He is now the CEO of the Pacific Institute and really focusing on driving growth and performance for both the Pacific Institute as well as some of the firms that he serves as well. He's worked with multiple Fortune 1000 companies, government agencies, healthcare systems, educational institutions, athletic teams, and nonprofit organizations. As a well-recognized speaker and author, Mark is frequently asked to share his professional insights and experience. He's appeared on a lot of major news outlets ranging from ABC's Wall Street Journal report to CNBC to the Canadian Broadcast Company. He's also been quoted a number of times in Forbes, the New York Times, the Miami Herald, Fort Lauderdale Sun Sentinel, and featured articles appearing in USA Today. Mark is also very, very much involved in his community, serving as the board or chairman of multiple organizations in his area. He earned his BA in business administration from the University of South Florida and an MBA from Florida Atlantic University. He's happily married to Tiffany, and his 3 children are Diana, Donna, and Mark number 2. So with that being said, Mark is awesome. So my own personal introduction. So Mark received me with open arms, so to speak. He was very much open to meeting with me. We actually got together at his office down in Florida, where I live now. And he had mentioned before we started recording, where do I get my energy? And I think I can ask that same question back to him because he's super open-minded, super collaborative, super welcoming. And Mark, I wanted to welcome you to the show, and I'm grateful for the time we're going to spend together today.
Oh my gosh, David, you are so darn kind. As I always listen to my bio, I say, oh my gosh, as I'm approaching my 60th year, which I'm a bit nervous about, I think to myself, is that me? Oh my gosh, who is he chatting away about? A lot of things, a lot of water under the bridge. But yeah, you energize me. I've so appreciated the way you've embraced me after meeting you through, yes, Bob Gregoire and the great people at CFG, Eric Spent as well. And, beyond your celery juice, you just got a good vibe, my brother. And so you give me energy, and I appreciate that. And certainly I appreciate it. I'm humbled by this introduction, and also, most importantly, the invitation to be with you today.
Love it. Thanks so much. And one thing that will be included in the show notes for those of you who would like to take a look, Mark also had done a TED Talk, and I've watched that TED Talk. It's awesome. And other people think it's awesome too. It's got like 200,000 views, 10,000 plus likes. So feel free to probably just Google TED Talk Mark Panciera, as well as there'll be a link in the show notes as well for you to check that out. So feel free to go and take a look at that once you're done listening to this show, of course. So Mark, I guess to start off, I shared, I should say, a little bit about your background through your bio. I'm more interested in your journey from where you got started to where you're at now. So you're the CEO of the Pacific Institute, which has global reach, which is pretty badass. But I'm sure you weren't born as a CEO, so to speak, maybe in your DNA, but not in reality. So where'd you get started, and bring us through the journey from then up until now?
Well, interestingly enough, I am an undertaker, born and bred in funeral service. And actually, you just mentioned my TED Talk. That was the provocative headline and also the platform that I played upon, which actually began my journey towards the Pacific Institute. I'll go there more in just a second. But yeah, born and raised in the funeral business, third generation funeral director. We own funeral homes here in South Florida. My son, Mark Anthony, is fourth generation. My wife is now running that business. But netting it out, I'm a caregiver at heart. I just have a big old heart set. We talk a lot about mindset, but heart set for others. And I want to go back to me thanking you for how you embraced me, because not only did you bring me energy, but you brought me opportunity to look much beyond my own comfort zones and the way we've done business over the last dozen odd years. That's how long I've been with the Institute, but embarking upon, new relationships, new market segments, for example, in insurance sales, financial services, and just the whole notion of how to be able to connect others to the power of mindset, habits, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations to drive greater personal and professional performance, no matter what walk of life they are traveling. So going back to my journey, started in funeral service. I learned about the Pacific Institute, which I can go a bit deeper on about if you like, but then never looked back. I'm now a caregiver much beyond death care, but to leaders around the globe. And in my TED Talk, I tell a little bit more about that. Back to you, David.
So one thing that I really like about what you guys do over there, so I've spent a lot of time over the last 3 or 4 years really focused on personal development, mindset, having belief in myself, dealing with impostor syndrome just based on my age when I started consulting for folks, or managing assets and implementing risk management strategies, when I was an advisor. And the question that I have for you to kick things off is, I guess, to give some more background first. There's a lot of people that we work with that we don't work with, and myself, where at different points in my life and at various points throughout their lives, they've lacked a certain belief in themselves that either something was possible or that they were capable themselves of accomplishing whatever goal it was that was important to them.
Yes.
How does someone increase the belief that they have in themselves in order to work towards the goal that they have?
Well, let me open by saying guilty as charged, because there's been a lot discussed and written about imposter syndrome. I think that consideration there's a bit of that consideration in all of us. And at times our self-talk just takes control and we tell ourselves that we're not worthy. I say guilty as charged because going back to my funeral service career, that's basically what I believe I faced as a third generation funeral director, born into this family business, really crushing it, having all the bling, kids going to private schools, driving the right cars, wearing the right watches, all those kinds of things, great life, but realizing that, or thinking as if I'm the one who hit the triple, meaning, man, I'm the one who crushed it. I scored. Look at what I got. But then hitting that glass ceiling and having that little imposter self-talk go off saying, well, man, you're third generation. Did you really do all this? Yeah, you grew it, but without those that came before you, your father, your grandfather, maybe you'd be a greeter at Walmart or, serving your drug of choice, Starbucks, if you will, which isn't a bad thing. As a matter of fact, it probably is very, very fulfilling. But I just knew I had more gas in my tank. I had more to offer. And so when I was introduced to the Pacific Institute and went through, because note, I brought in a performance psychologist to our grief recovery group called Wings of Hope. And I needed to give them a booster shot to help them go through their loss journey, their recovery journey more specifically. And this performance psychologist put the group through an exercise to uncover blind spots. We call them scotomas. In Greek, the word scotoma means blindness or blind spots, something that's cognitively blocked out in your mind. It might be running right in front of you, but you're missing it. For example, you're talking to a friend. Oh, wait a second. Let me go back in the restaurant because I just paid the bill and I put my phone down. I think I left my cell in the restaurant. And your pal says on the phone, hey, Panciera, you're on your cell. You called me from your mobile and it's right in your hand. That's a scotoma. Cognitive block. You tell yourself that you've lost something and you haven't, but it's hidden in plain sight. So no, I went through that exercise with this grief recovery group. And I realized that, oh my gosh, I had big blind spots. I had big blind spots to other opportunity. But the belief, going back to your question, David, the belief was that this was my lot in life, third generation, proud of the family. I'm going to keep doing this. And oh my gosh, have I made it? But I always had that little imposter in my mind, or at least a chatterbox in my mind saying, Panciera, are you the real deal? Or are you just a paper lion? Are you a bit of a head fake kind of thing, vaporware? And so to conclude my answer, and I want to get deeper into how to change beliefs, but it all begins with, there's more to it, but it begins with an awareness of something that you might be missing that's right in front of you that you need to then set a plan to go and achieve to secure. But it begins with awareness first. And so that's how I started my journey with the Pacific Institute and have risen through the ranks to become the CEO.
So you mentioned a specific phrase a couple times as you were giving your answer, and it was the phrase self-talk. And I'm very aware now of self-talk. So there's been various studies that range from like 30,000 to 70,000 to 100,000 thoughts that people have on a daily basis. So whichever one, reading at the time, just know it's a shitload of thoughts that you're having on a daily basis, right? And the majority of those thoughts tend to be negative more so than positive if you're not self-aware in that moment to reframe. So as an example, I try and call people out all the time where if they say, oh, I have to go pick up the kids. I'm like, no, you get to go pick up the kids. Or if people say, oh, I'm such an idiot, careful of your self-talk, right? So Bob Gregoire in the session, he was like, whenever someone says that, say, careful of your self-talk, right? So for anyone who's listening, who knows me personally or, works with us or whatever, you've probably heard me say that to you, multiple times. And that's where it originated from, was that session, Commonwealth Financial Group. So I guess my question is, how does someone begin to take those 30,000 plus thoughts on a daily basis and change them from negative to positive? Because what my gut tells me is that when you do that, you start to instill the belief in yourself because you're building yourself up on a daily basis as opposed to tearing yourself down. So let's get to the root of the issue. And I think the opportunity to improve. How does someone reframe their self-talk compared to where they're at now?
Sure. I want to trade upon what you just shared. And yes, we have 50 to 70,000 thoughts going through our mind each day. I'm not sure who counted them, but that's what the research.
That's like how many licks does it take to get to the center of it?
Exactly, right on. Not sure who counted, but that is the general wisdom of today. And well, let me ask you, what grows naturally in the garden?
Weeds.
Exactly. We've got 80, 90% of those 50 to 70,000 thoughts be negative. Those are negative inhibitors, if you will, to our performance. And so to answer your question, how do we fix that? Well, it begins with my answer to your last question. And it's first through awareness, just a simple awareness that, oh my gosh, I must be careful. I must think about what I'm thinking about, because what I'm thinking about, I am speaking to myself. So I wear this rubber band that says positive self-talk, the pattern interrupt. And it's not a technical device, but I use this to help me with my cognition to snap myself out of that subconscious downward spiral. And so it begins with an awareness that those numbers play out. Weeds grow naturally in the garden. So just like that, naturally, our thoughts go negative. Why? Based on the cognitive sciences, as we teach at the Pacific Institute, our reptilian brain was built that way. Fight or flight, from back when we were evolving. We've heard of fight or flight, right, David?
Yep.
Now we know also freeze, duck and cover, because there's that tendency as well. But we've got to bring ourselves out of that subconscious tailspin and bring us back up to the conscious level, knowing that that's what's transpiring. And very much like you mentioned about the impostor syndrome, I realized that it was there, subconscious in nature, but that was inhibiting me from stepping out of my comfort zone. But as soon as I was aware that that is what naturally happened, happens, it gave me the authority to redirect. And there's other steps in redirection, but the first step is to drive an awareness to the fact that this is reality.
So one of my good friends and mentors from afar, his name is Ben Newman, and his word for redirect is reframe. Okay.
Yes.
So step one is awareness, right? How does the role of affirmations play in creating a more consistent positive thoughts to ultimately increase the beliefs that you have in yourself? How should people be constructing their affirmations, and when should they be utilizing those? Is it daily? Is it multiple times a day? What does that look like?
Sure. So before I answer the question specifically, I want to go deeper into the belief piece that you shared, because you're right. Beliefs are the real drivers. So if you believe that you're a poser, if you believe that you shouldn't be on stage, if you believe that you shouldn't be making the money that you're making, well, you're going to self-regulate back to the negative belief level. That all goes to that self-talk that's driven from experiences when we were kids. And so going back to what we teach, we understand as leaders, we always want performance outcomes. And we say, okay, we need to change our behaviors in order to perform differently. Well, more present thinkers, if you will, advanced thinkers say it's not just about the behavior. You got to go back to the belief level. And so a lot of folks talk about IQ and EQ. Well, I'm a proponent of BQ, belief quotient, BI, belief intelligence, because it's the thinking first, that's self-talk, okay? 50, 70,000 times a day, reversing the 80 to 90% being negative, thinking, driving new beliefs, neuroplasticity, science plays that out, that we can actually change the morphology of our brain, right? Those beliefs are going to drive different behaviors onto new outcomes. Now, going back to your quantifiable, or the question that you asked me to quantify, how many times you've got to reaffirm, to reframe your thinking to make it stick. Well, it's less about the frequency and more about the intensity. I'll explain. We think in three dimensions. Words, self-talk, trading on what you said, words that create pictures in our mind, okay, that drive emotion. Words, pictures, emotions. And we move towards the strongest picture because it's got the strongest emotion, whether for good or bad, okay? So you got to think about what you're thinking about. And so when it comes to affirmation, do you have a strong enough picture in your mind with emotion of what you want? Because then affirming that with visceral conviction, with a commitment to say, I'm going to slay this, carpe diem, seize the day. I own that. I own that. It is a vow, like, yes, I do. When you're getting married, it's one statement. I do. Well, man, you're married. You walk in unmarried, you walk out married after saying I do. Well, man, I'm saying I do. I'm going to slay this podcast because I want to show up for David. And so my affirmation has just been envisioning how lovely this exchange is going to go. And I'm drawn into it because I'm drawn emotionally and passionately. It becomes a subconscious competence. So in conclusion, again, you've got to create repetition. Let's consider that whether it's 3 affirmations over 3 days, over 3 weeks, there's power in threes. But I can tell you that to begin to habitualize something, you got to do it at least 3 times. Two data points start beginning a trend, but the 3rd time that you get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to press that snooze button on the 4th time to go exercise. You're rehabitualizing you not exercising because now you're driving that strong emotion to go get her done. I gave you a lot. Did that all make sense?
It does.
Hey, Model FAs. I know you're enjoying this conversation, but I wanted to take a quick break to talk to you about the Model FA Accelerator. This is a unique collaboration between us and you, where we help you build a financial advising practice that you can be proud of. We focus on the foundational concepts around how to pick a niche or a specialization, how to price your services, how to construct an offer that people are going to buy, and then how to market it and sell it in a way that'll get people to sign on the dotted line and become clients of your firm, all while giving you the information to scale and set up workflows and operational processes that will allow you to reclaim your time and build a practice that doesn't run you. So if you'd like to hear more about that, go to www.modelfa.com/accelerator or www.modelfa.com. Hover over, work with us, and click on Accelerator. Hope to see you in the program.
One thing that I do every morning and every evening is, and for those of you who are listening to this, you can just go on Amazon and get this if you're interested. It's called the 5-minute journal. And essentially what the 5-minute journal is when you first wake up in the morning, you go ahead and you fill out the first portion, which is the date, right? There's usually some sort of quote or prompt or something like that. You list out 3 things that you're grateful for. So it starts with gratitude in the morning to reframe your mind to be thinking like that, as opposed to worrying or having a scarcity mindset, things like that. And things that you're grateful for can simply be a good night's sleep or warm sheets or, your breath or whatever. It doesn't need to be groundbreaking. And then goes into the 3 things that will make that day great. Right. So maybe it's being present in all of your interactions. Maybe it's following through on the meals that you plan to eat that day or the workouts that you had, whatever. And there's 2 affirmations. So the 2 affirmations that I write down every day are I am healthy in mind, body, and spirit, and I am experiencing unlimited wealth. Right. Those are the 2 affirmations that I write down every day. And then in the evening, it's what were the 3 best things that happened that day? And the last one is what would have made today better? Right. So you're practicing self-awareness through that entire exercise. Right. And I like to ask myself 3 questions when, regardless of if something good, bad, or indifferent happens, what did I do to put myself in this situation? What am I supposed to learn? And how am I going to get better as a result of it? So if something positive happened, I want to know what caused that to happen and continue to double down on that. And if something didn't go as planned, I want to know why that is to learn and avoid that moving forward. Now, what I do with this journal, which is kind of quirky, but it works, is when I go to bed in the evening, I put the book propped up against my bedroom door because it's such an easy thing to forget to do. And you're like, oh, I totally forgot to do that. Right. So I prop it up against my bedroom door so that when I open the door, it falls over and I see it and it reminds me to do it. Yeah. And then when I'm done filling it out in the morning, my bed's made and I just prop it up on my pillow, so that when I go to bed, again, it's the first thing that I see. So those are some of the ways that I remind myself. But I guess my point of sharing that is ever since I've started with those affirmations, just again, I'm healthy in mind, body, and spirit, and I'm experiencing unlimited wealth. Those areas of my life have continued to improve. And part of the result, or the reason why I should say that is the result, is because those things are consistently on your mind. Your Razz takes over from there. So on that note, Mark, can you describe what a Razz is for the listeners?
Man, you need to come over to this side of you got to be shoulder to shoulder with me at the Pacific Institute because you're fabulous. There was so much richness in what you just shared, David. The Razz is the reticular activating system. It's a net-like group of cells at the base of our brain, and it helps with us in value discernment. And, it helps us move towards things of value and move away from things that are a threat. But it's working 24/7. So it's part of the subconscious. That said, what David just explained was that he set his Razz on his replacement picture. An affirmation is a positive statement about something that you're desirous of in the future. You may not have it today, but it's the notion of that you possess what you are seeking. And so basically it's hacking your mind. And so when you hack your mind in a habitual or rehabitualized way over and over, I am smooth and confident and I am a strong earner and I celebrate that daily. If you're not smooth and confident, smooth in my presentations, confident in my sales techniques and delivery, and I'm affluent and I earn abundantly because of those activities, and oh my gosh, am I pleased? You're adding new software to your hardware. You're overriding the old software. And so you're creating this neuroplasticity, and your reticular activating system is serving you up ways to make your affirmations come true, to make sure that you are secure, that you're not lying to yourself, that you really are smooth and confident, and that you're affluent, and that you do well, and you're celebrating your successes. Just to conclude, it all works symbiotically together because we are also teleological. What does that mean? We move towards and become like that what we think about. So if we're thinking about smoothness, if we're thinking about abundance, if we're thinking about a fluidness in presentations and transactional prowess, you're going to move towards that. I use this as an example quite often. When I taught my kids how to ride a two-wheel bicycle, all three of them at different years because they're different ages. I remember so vividly. I didn't have this information then. I wish I did. But I remember starting them on down the sidewalk, holding the back of their seats and their bicycle seat, and they were wobbling. But I said, keep pedaling harder. I let them go. I love you. You're doing great. Oh my gosh, look how fabulous. But look out for the rock on the left side of the sidewalk. Where'd the kid go every time? Exactly. Exactly. So I set them up for failure on that first journey because when you think rock, you get rock. Mm-hmm. Literally. And so that is the power of affirmation. It's not woo-woo. It's not just dreaming it up. And so lastly, I'm going to give it back to you. I mentioned on the front end, the first step in recasting beliefs. We call them HABEs, habits, attitudes, beliefs, and expectations. That's mindset, okay? You start by an awareness. I shared with all of you this, what might you be missing? Well, it's tough to uncover, be a scotoma buster for yourself, uncover your own, so you'll need help along the way. I got help, but I didn't expect it to appear at that grief recovery program. But after the awareness, you got to drive an acceptance of what you want. And that's what you were describing, David. And you put all the triggers in place. And for the audience, James Clear, Atomic Habits, he speaks specifically to putting the triggers in place. I mean, if you suffer from diabetes, you don't go and have a cup of coffee in a candy store or an ice cream store because you're around the wrong things. Don't be around the triggers, right? But if you're forgetting about filling out your journal, well, have it be the trigger that you're going to open up your eyes to every morning. So first awareness, then acceptance to what you want. I want to fill my journal out. I want to do my affirmations. I want to live a healthy lifestyle. So what do you got to do? You got to go do what it takes. You got to go get your celery juice. You got to get the juicer. You got to make sure. I mean, I'm locked on, man. I'm going to give up Starbucks. Forgive me. I've already invested heavily in your company over the last 20 years. I'm going to go on celery juice. I'm all about that. Drink something green every day. So it's awareness, acceptance to what you want, but then action. And you need action that will throw yourself out of order. That's cognitive dissonance in order to perform at higher levels of order. And then finally, you got to celebrate your achievements. So the answer to changing beliefs is awareness, acceptance, action, achievement. And all that you've expressed is all based in the cognitive sciences, which I've been filling in those blanks for you.
So there's an analogy that has really stuck with me over the years. And I don't know if it was from you guys or if it was from a book or a podcast or wherever I got it, but going back to the Razz, when you say things like, oh, I'm always late, right? Or I'm bad at remembering names, or, oh, I'm an idiot, or, this probably won't work out. Your brain, your Razz, is going to figure out how to make that happen and how to allow that to become true. So picture you're on the mountain right? You're skiing or you're snowboarding or whatever. And, you're just going down the same couple paths all the time, right? Well, that snow is packed down, or sledding even, make it even easier. So you're sledding down this hill and you go back up to the top and you sled down that same one because it's easier, it's faster, right? That's what you're used to, as opposed to forging a new path.
Yeah.
And so every time you say something negative, whether it be self-talk or sometimes even out loud, you're just going to go down that path that you've already forged for yourself.
Correct.
However, now imagine that your affirmations of the person who you want to become represents a fresh snowfall, right? So you got this mountain now, and this cloud comes above it, and it starts to snow. What does it do? You got a fresh coat of snow everywhere, and there's no paths that are forged anywhere, right? So the affirmations represent that snowfall, to where it covers up all your prior negative beliefs, negative self-talk, etc. And then you have the opportunity through action to make a conscious effort to go and sled down a brand new path. And your Razz takes over from there, and you start to figure out, let's say your affirmations are like mine, where it's healthy in mind, body, and spirit, experience unlimited wealth, right? Whatever affirmations are important to you, your Razz takes over and it wants to help you make those things true. But when you're stuck in a certain lane, right, that sledding trail, it's tough to get out of that. So your affirmations serve as a clean slate to then forge a brand new path. And that's an analogy that has stuck with me for a while now.
You are so right on. Affirmations are golden. I mean, it's somewhat like secret sauce, but I want to make it real for the audience. Affirmations are practice. I mean, why did Michael Jordan become the greatest? It was the more he practiced, the luckier he got. That may be his quote, if I'm not mistaken, but it's forging that muscle memory that some may understand. In sports, it's being in flow. In gaming, you're just hitting all those markers and time disappears. It's this subconscious competence. And that's what you're trading on the metaphor that you just shared about forging new paths. Absolutely. Affirmations, visualization, adding energy to it. Celebrating those successes along the way, because the brain loves endings and new beginnings. It's a dopamine hit, man. It's like being on crack in a non-pharmaceutical way. But I should say the pharmaceutical, you got your own CVS pharmacy in your mind, and you can intentionally release the epinephrine that, get that runner's high on your own. I want to share. So yes, and yes again on all that you just shared. And everything that David said is accurate per current neuroscience, okay? I just want to share with the audience as well, though, that anything worth having doesn't come easy. So you got to put the effort in. And when you are forging that new path, you're going to deal with what's termed in the cognitive sciences, cognitive dissonance. You're going to feel out of order. You're going to feel, I don't know if anyone is if anybody's visualizing this, but I have a rubber band in my hand, and my right hand is holding the rubber band taut. And let's say my right hand is higher than my left, which it is, and that's the goal. And I'm at a current reality, which is my left hand. Well, if I want to get to my goal, what stands in between? I don't know if you hear that on the rubber band, but it's pressure-filled situations. It's eustress. It's euphoric stress. That's supposed to be there. It's an out of order into order scenario. Systems seek order, but you got to throw your brain out of order first, very much like working out a muscle. You've got to atrophy it for it to grow back healthy, bigger and stronger the next time. Same thing. That's what affirmations do. That's what your reticular helps yourself with. But you've got to put the effort in. But it's not just get it done and more effort and tenacity, because all of that is a product of tenacity, perseverance, persistence, grit. It is a byproduct of the successes that you will garner along the way, realizing that you are making strides, realizing that you do feel more healthy, realizing first and foremost that you are aware that you want something different than your current reality. I remember when I left the funeral home that night, after going through that scotoma exercise, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do, what I wanted. Well, I just knew I wanted something different. I wanted to be a caregiver to the world versus just in an isolated funeral home business. That was crushing it, doing very, very well. I mean, serving the community, but I wanted to 10X that using a Grant Cardone term, right? And a Lou Tice term. Lou, 40, 50 years ago, talked about our founder, add a zero to it. Same thing as 10X, just add a zero to it.
Yeah.
And lastly, David, I'm going to give it back to you. Think about that exercise for new affirmations. How do you all feel if you had a car payment and you added a zero to it? What would you be driving? How about if your house payment, rent, or your mortgage, add a zero to it? Where the hell would you be living? How about your suit? Or a beautiful sports jacket or a beautiful pair of shoes? Add a zero to the purchase price. What would you be wearing? How do you feel in that new comfort zone? Or is it tough to get there? Or you say, oh, I don't even see myself there. Well, if you don't see yourself into that replacement picture, give it up, because you're never going to have the efficacy to get it. But if you've got the drive to get there, and with that add a zero concept, the 10X concept, I'm telling you, the wind will be at your back and you'll be motivated because of that euphoric stress to secure the very affirmations that you're painting the picture of in your mind.
This may have been from Bob. I got to do a better job, like keeping track of these things that stick with me so I can give the proper credit. So it may be someone else, but there's three things that I want to hit on. One is energy. The other is habits. And the third one is confidence before we wrap up. So someone had shared with me that the difference between where you are and where your goal is the amount of energy that you're going to expend towards that goal, right? So for those of you who are just listening, I got my, two hands parallel to one another, stacked on top of each other, about 2 inches apart. Okay. So if I'm here at the bottom hand and I want to get here, the top hand, that's the amount of energy that I'm going to expend towards that goal. But if I'm here where my hand still is, that hasn't changed, but then my goal is up here, so now I'm reaching at the ceiling, the difference between the space between my hands is the amount of energy that I can expend towards that goal. So what I try and do as it relates to goal setting is, in a perfect world, I never hit my goals because I'm constantly adjusting them up as I get closer to maintain my energy levels. So an example that rings all too true to me in the past, and so far, since I've recognized this, it's gotten better and better, where if I want to get in a certain amount of shape or like weigh a certain amount or like get a 6-pack or whatever, in the past, as I would see that coming close, I would lose the energy to, focus on that. And therefore I would eat more, I would work out less because I felt like I already made it, even though I didn't actually make it. So, every year I'll have like a fitness goal to do X, Y, and Z by the end of the year. Well, this year I had that same goal, but I was like by February, right? It was a big goal in a shorter amount of time. And I didn't hit it, but I was way closer than I would have been if I didn't have that initial deadline. And then it's like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to Medellin, Colombia in March, which I'm excited about. So now it's like, okay, now my goal is to be in a certain type of shape by the time I get there. So these like micro goals along the way. So be cognizant of what you're setting for your goals. If you just have a 5% uptick or a 10% uptick from where you are to where you want to be, like you're not even going to try, right? Like make it astronomical, but you got something on the tip of your tongue. So go for it.
Well, you are just crushing it in so many regards. You're hitting a lot of things. Number one, the concept of horizon beyond the horizon is actually a chapter in one of our books. And David, you're spot on, because as you approach goal attainment, you do run out of energy. And I want to tie the energy piece that you shared with the audience to what I had expressed earlier about the way we think in 3 dimensions. Words, pictures, and emotions. You move towards the strongest picture because it's got the strongest emotion. And so as you said, emotion, it's emotive. They're byproducts of what energy, emotion, they are synonymous. And so you must have this vivid picture of what you want, because that will be the energy to propel you through those difficult times. But you must keep stretching beyond the horizon as you approach it. So it's always the horizon beyond the horizon. Now, note for the audience also, don't think that you need to choke yourself off or tap out, say, man, I just don't want to live that way. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to go to Medellin. It's okay to go to Colombia. It's okay to have ice cream. It's okay to have a pizza. It's okay to whatever. But just know that it is a pattern interrupt on your quest for the next level of achievement. So horizon beyond the horizon, energy spot on. You had mentioned something. Oh, you said the little wins along the way. That ties to goal setting theory. The distal goal, or the goal out in the future, the horizon beyond the horizon, it's out there. But you've got to celebrate your proximal goal wins little by little for you to springboard to the next proximal goal to get to the long-term one. And a great example of that from just a proud and incredible veteran, Navy SEAL instructor. He delivered Admiral McCraven. You've heard make your bed every day. He delivered the commencement speech 2016, University of Texas. I mean, I'm humbled by, just because we've worked with the SEALs in the past, I'm just humbled by his message. And that is, you could begin changing the world by making your bed every day. And that speaks to the notion of proximal wins. You get up, you set a goal, you make your bed, achieve the task. It's a job well done. You can springboard to the other deliverables, if you will, throughout the next 8 hours of your life. But it's about making your bed. Now, sort of metaphorical, but he was very, very clear, and he stepped the audience through, and it's just a wonderful YouTube video. You can change the world. You can begin to change the world by making your bed every day.
Ever since I listened to that video, that's what makes me make my bed every day. So that stuck well with me. So habits and leading into confidence. So we've talked a lot about what some people I think would perceive as like fluffy stuff, although I think it's incredibly important. And if you think it's fluffy, that's probably part of the issue, right? I mean, I've listened to a lot of books. I don't read the books. I listen to a lot of books around successful people and things that they accomplish. And it's not overly complicated what they do. It's simple. It's just not easy. So there was also a video that one of my clients, Chaz, shared with me about the late Kobe Bryant, about the beauties and the basics, right? Mm-hmm. And a quote from him basically saying, like, I'm going to practice all the basic stuff. Like, why do you think I'm so good? It's because I'm focused on those things. And successful people are no different. Like, they're talking to themselves. Like, if they had a bubble over their head, you'd think they were crazy based on the things they say about themselves in a positive manner. But, you know, crazy is good in that instance. So habits and confidence, which is a little bit more of a tangible concept outside of just thinking that you're talking to yourself. So oftentimes people try and get rid of a habit. And the analogy that stuck with me was, picture you have a living room. So behind me right now is a living room, right? And I get rid of all the furniture, right? And the furniture is representative of bad habits, right? So I'm getting rid of my bad habits. So I take it out. I'm like, wow, there's so much more space in here, right? All my bad habits are gone, right? This old furniture is gone. Well, after probably 2, maybe 3 days, a week, if I'm a little bit resilient, I'm probably going to get sick of standing in the living room. And I'm going to go outside or in the garage or in the basement, and I'm going to bring that furniture back up so I can sit, right? When you remove a bad habit, right? When you take out that furniture, it's important for you to replace that furniture with new furniture, right? So if you're going to remove a bad habit, it then needs to be replaced with a good habit. And then what ends up happening is, I believe that confidence is either built or suppressed based on whether or not you keep the little promises that you make to yourself on a daily basis. And that can ultimately start with following through on the good habits, right, that you replaced with the bad habits that you got rid of. So to wrap up this segment of the show, before we get into your favorite book, which I just recently listened to again, as well as the after hours portions, Mark, what are some of the daily disciplines that people can be doing in order to build their confidence moving forward? Because if they believe in themselves, if they have positive self-talk, if they have confidence, if they have great habits, they then can ultimately take action and do so in a powerful way. So what are some things folks can do on a daily basis to ultimately build their confidence?
Again, great, rich stuff that you just shared because you're teaching as well as you're teeing up the next question. But I want to go a little bit deeper on confidence. There's a concept by Dr. Albert that was really made foundational as it relates to the performance sciences called the efficacy theory or efficacy concept. And efficacy, like with a drug, how efficacious is a drug? Does it get you better or not? Efficacy is our causative power, our belief within ourselves that we can set a goal and achieve it. Our confidence that we're able to make our bed every morning, going back to the simplicity of what you just shared. And so efficacy is vitally important. I will say that before efficacy comes self-confidence. You mentioned confidence. But not confidence that you can shoot a free throw or hit a driver off the deck, middle of the fairway, or run a mile, or homeschool your kids. Just the self-worth, the self-care, the self-belief in you as an individual. Because if you don't put the oxygen mask on yourself first and truly do a timeout and wrap your mind around holistic well-being, stopping the downward cycle. We've all dealt with such, not only the C19 disease, but the dis-ease in our lives, the uncertainty. We've got to stop, do a timeout and say, I'm enough. I'm worthy. Brene Brown's work, out of University of Houston, but I am enough. And the oxygen. So self-confidence, it begins with self-belief that, I actually can make my bed. I can take that breath. I can put my 2 feet on the ground. And I'm using your simplistic, but so profound examples, David, that you shared earlier, because it starts that basically. Oh my God, despite everything, I was able to take a breath today. And I'm able to go attempt to get more healthy if I'm sick, or I'm able to help someone else who needs me, whatever the case may be. But it all starts with, all meaningful and lasting change starts within ourselves. You've got to start with believing in yourself despite all odds. And once that begins, then the domino effect takes over, building self-efficacy, being able to change beliefs and move towards the achievement, even at the most simple of levels, whether it's making your bed or doing that double black diamond ski run that you were talking about earlier.
So that's a perfect segue into your favorite book. So Mark's favorite book is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I feel like a lot of people, of course, know about the book, but a lot of people also haven't read it. Yeah. I would highly suggest that you do so. Just because you talk about it doesn't mean that you learned it and you put it into action. And I would also make sure to reread that book on a yearly basis. I just re-listened to that a few weeks ago. And you just brought something up that's in that book that I want to hit on. And I want to talk more about why it's your favorite book. So you said something about, you got to be able to master yourself and figure out yourself. And one thing that Napoleon Hill says in the book is that if you cannot master yourself and your mind, you cannot master anything else around you. So you're not going to master your business. You're not going to master your relationships. And sure, you may have a business or you may have a relationship, but if you haven't mastered yourself, then your business and your relationship are nowhere near where they ultimately could be, right? There's a governor that's put on them because you put a governor on yourself, quite frankly. So he talks about the importance of mastering oneself. So tossing it over to you, share with us why it's your favorite book and how you try to live your life in accordance to it.
One thing that Napoleon Hill did was create a board of directors, a mastermind group in his mind, and they were just extraordinary individuals. I'm not going to go deep into that. I do recommend you all read it, but I want to get a bit more current in our conversation because as much as I'm a mindset devotee, I'm a mindset acolyte, I so believe in mindset connected to heart set, connected to higher purpose, all of the cognitive elements, all the research. I also am deep into Russell Brunson and his trilogy on ClickFunnels right now. So I share that with everybody because no margin, no mission. You still got to transact business. That's the action. So I want to get this, I want to have it be real for everyone that, it starts with mindset, but then it's onto skill set because you got to deliver. So when I was asked my favorite book, oh, by the way, I'm also a fan of Audible. And with C19, can't go to the gym. So I bought myself a bicycle for last Father's Day. And so I'm a book a week on Audible, ride the neighborhood and just getting after it, because you got to keep feeding your brain. So I just share that with you because you said you listen to your books as well. But Think and Grow Rich, I've listened to multiple times because it is wisdom that stood the test of time. It's 100 years old. I think the work began in 1917. It was published in 1937. He goes around the country and does a case study on 500 odd people that were successful. And he asked Thomas Edison, presidents of the United States, extraordinary, Henry Ford, extraordinary people. And they all said the same thing 100 years ago. Mindset, what the mind of man can conceive and believe. The pictures, what we're talking about, that you can put your brain under a functional MRI now and show that your thinking drives synaptic firings, and man, it drives new behaviors. But this guy says it 100 years ago, and he's told this by all these famous people, and here it is. And you've all heard this in different forms, but what the mind of man can conceive and actually believe. So you conceive it, paint the picture, and you believe it, affirmation, it can achieve, it can come true for you. So it's not just a secret, like a kid sits on his porch and he dreams about a bike and it appears. No, you got to get effort. You got to do ClickFunnels. You got to connect with people like David. David is a flipping rock star, man. And I was pleased because with all this gray hair, I used to color it in so I look more wise and mature, with a guy that is so sharp. And now I'm not patronizing you, with his energy, looking the way he does and his youth. I'm thinking, man, I'm back at it. This is the beginning of my career. If he thinks I'm something, man, and wind is at my back. But gosh, and you're a mindset, you embrace mindset as well. So gosh, for a century and more, you can go back to Lao Tzu. Journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. Mm-hmm. There's so much power in mindset, but what Napoleon Hill did, he memorialized his research, 20 years of it, and then developed his committee in his mind in the most positive. I think Abraham Lincoln was on his board of directors or something in his mind. Yeah. And this guy made it come true. He manifested mindset. Now we prove it with science, and I'm a living proof based on my story of funeral service. Everything that I eat my own dog food, everything that I preach to you today, man, I've lived, and pinch me. Now I'm leading an organization that coaches leaders around the globe. And I'm interfacing with my pal, rock star, David.
That was awesome. I feel like I want to run through a brick wall, and obviously I appreciate the kind words. So before we go into the after hours section, so feel free to stick around for that. Mark, where can people find you? How can they connect with you?
Surely. The Pacific Institute, www.thepacificinstitute.com. Or LinkedIn, certainly. But we're a 50-year-old company, been doing this for decades, as mentioned. But man, my cell, 954-684-1650. Call me. I'm a caregiver to the world, and I want to be a vessel for this extraordinary information.
Love that. What I will say is, for those of you who did enjoy this and want to connect with Mark, I'm sure I can speak on his behalf, and this is true. But whenever I put myself out there and say, hey, hit me up, when someone actually hits me up and has a question or wants to learn more about what we do, that gives me so much energy that you didn't just consume this and you actually took action on it. And those are the types of people that I love to build a relationship with. And I love to, be able to help and serve with whatever's on your plate. So if that's of interest, take them up on it, go rewind it and write down the number. As for me, feel free to text me as well, because we do have two asks of you. One is, if you found this episode to be valuable, share it with a friend. This is something that there's been so many people in my life that I've shared certain podcast episodes with, not our podcast per se, not that egotistical, but, with other podcasts like the MF CEO Project or Playbook by Dave Meltzer, right? Things like that, Burn by Ben Newman. And what's great about that is they get the value from the podcast, and that may change their life for the better, but they associate that value with you. So you're immediately put into a different category, and that category is a good place to be. So with that being said, what I would invite you to do is, if you would be so kind as to leave a review on iTunes, take a screenshot of that review and shoot me a text to 978-228-2338. Again, 978-228-2338. You'll get an automated reply with a link to enter in your information. Then you'll be added to my contacts, and send me a text message with a screenshot of that review. And however many people do that after this episode, you'll be entered into a lottery and you'll get some free coaching from us. So feel free to do that, do a coaching session or two, help you through whatever it is that you're working through. And we would appreciate that. If you do want to connect with me or us at the Model FA, simply modelfa.com. Or you can feel free to just Google David Decell, and all my social links will pop up there. The one that I use the most often is Instagram. So that's just at David_Decell. But we are just over an hour or so into this episode. So thank you so much for spending your precious time with everyone. And before I close out, Mark, any final words?
I should have given my email as well. M for Mark, Panciera, P as in Peter, A-N, Nancy, C-I-E-R-A, at the Pacific Institute. M Panciera at the Pacific Institute. Back to you, David. Thank you.
Awesome. And everything that we just shared, by the way, too, will be in the show notes. So if you're driving right now and can't, write this stuff down, feel free to take a look at the show notes when you're not driving, and you'll get all that information there. So with that being said, closing out this segment, and we will see you during the after hours. I feel like I want to high five you. That was great. Thank you everybody for listening to that amazing episode with Mark, and very much appreciate you all sticking around for the after hours portion. So Mark, first question that I have for you is, you've obviously been speaking for a while now, specifically at TED Talk that we talked about earlier in the episode, as well as I'm sure plenty of other opportunities. And every time I come across someone who is a speaker, typically they have some sort of embarrassing story that has some life lessons kind of attached to that. Share with me an embarrassing story of yourself early on in your career when you started on the speaking circuit.
David, that's actually a great question, because yes, embarrassing, but absolutely life-changing. And my new mantra is, how am I growing through what I am going through? So if I only knew then what I knew now, it wouldn't be embarrassing, and I would really be thankful for experiencing it. So to the point, when I first started along my presentational trek, if you will, and I never thought of it as a career. Now at the Pacific Institute, leading the company, I feel like I'm a vessel or a conduit for this incredible information to get it out there with a megaphone. And so I'm that mouthpiece, if you will, along with others on our team. But to the point, I began along this journey back in my funeral service career days, and not even knowing that the Pacific Institute existed. So probably about 25 odd years ago, I was the head of our funeral service association here in Florida. I was a national media spokesperson for the industry as well, talking to some pretty notable media outlets. It was darn heady. That said, I had an opportunity to present in Reno, and I was just, busy as a hornet and a red-eye flight, and I didn't have all of my thoughts in order for a presentation the next morning, but did the red-eye, caffeined up, landed in Reno, showered, and hustled down to the conference room. And I remember distinctly that, you got that post-flight, no sleep, bunch of caffeine feeling. And man, I was just feeling tight. And I see the smile, you get it. So I was feeling tight. And man, even my collar, and I said, man, I feel like I should, because in funeral service, you always button up in front of audiences, suit and tie. But I said to myself, my gosh, I feel like I should unbutton here. But no, that's, you got to stay formal. I get in front of the audience. There were probably 300-400 in the crowd. And all of a sudden, a great introduction. I get up there and, podium and man, all of a sudden I start feeling woozy. And problem is, I start concentrating on that wooziness.
I'm getting uncomfortable for you right now.
My brother, it was nanoseconds, but it might as well have been years, decades going before my eyes. And I'm looking out in the audience and I'm making eye contact with friends and associates and colleagues and fans and others just waiting to hear this extraordinary information. that I was going to share. Son of a gun, if I felt like I was going to hit the ground. And the more I concentrate on that feeling, it wasn't just a physical pathology, it was anxiety. Anxiety was taking over. And there was this dead silence and nothing would come out of my mouth. And I mean, it was a 3-hour presentation in front of me. I'm feeling weird about it now in retrospect, but bringing this in for a landing, the conference promoter came up and offered me actually a chair in front of his audience and a glass of water. Son of a gun, if I don't take my tie down and loosen my collar just to get some air, and I take the glass of water and I so distinctly remember it, my hand was shaking like this. And I'm telling you, I dripped water on me. I was so frightened. Son of a gun, if through sitting down and gathering my thoughts and just, having folks, just welcoming me with their warmth of just, hoping for that everything would be okay, I got through it. I will tell you, though, that I relived that experience for 2 decades following, actually until I met the Pacific Institute, because I kept ruminating and it became not only a moment that it replayed in my mind, but it grew, it developed a life of its own and created its own anxiety. And my gosh, I get in front of my staff and say, okay, am I going to fall flat? Am I going to be able to say the right words? Is my brain going to connect to my mouth, going to connect to my heart, my genuine feeling? And oh my gosh, I will tell you that was such a growing opportunity in retrospect because it was physical, caffeined up, no sleep. I hear about this vagal nerve response. I was just bloated, with water retention and the like when you fly. But that physical manifestation turned into, a mental state that I had to work through. And now, instead of being a worrier, I become a warrior in this regard. And I just want to share with everyone out there that there's always a path to growth, no matter the setback. And, I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm reading my headlines and I'm a rock star doing this. And then all of a sudden, taking 10 steps forward, I took a mile backwards saying, I'm never going to be able to do this again in my life. I'm done. I'm embarrassed. And people actually came up to me afterwards, years afterwards, said, you should have been so proud of yourself the way you persevered. But I was so embarrassed for years, I ducked and covered. So I can tell you all, no matter the setback, there's always opportunity for growth and resurgence. And that's why I'm just embracing how do you grow through what you're going through?
So I was going to say that quote again. I wrote that down right after you said it, how am I growing through what I'm going through? I think that's really important. I also think one of the ahas that I had as you were going through that is you spent a couple decades reliving that and probably always having some sort of anxiety, right, around going and getting on stage again till you found the Pacific Institute, and not so much hey, the Pacific Institute is going to fix everything, but the idea that the Pacific Institute has the tools and the resources necessary to allow you to be more mindful and intentional with your thoughts, your actions, etc. So for everyone listening, if you're struggling with something that is in your mind, well, of course, you can reach out to the Pacific Institute. You could also just simply Google, right, best books to overcome fear, right? Best books to insert, whatever it is that you're looking to go through. And a lot of these things are learned over time. And if you have that growth mentality, as you mentioned with the quote, how am I growing through what I'm going through? Yeah. You'll be okay. Plus, a good self-awareness exercise I go through is after those circumstances, good, bad, or indifferent, really, because if something's bad, you want to improve. If something's good, you want to replicate. So ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do to put myself in this situation, right? Take extreme ownership. What am I supposed to learn? And how am I going to get better as a result of it? And that way you ensure that you're actually growing through what you're going through because you're being mindful along the way.
David, you just totally nailed it. And for the audience's benefit, I realized I actually read the book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, but fear, false expectations appearing real. And now, whenever you get that flutter, now before I get on a podcast with my dear friend David, or get in front of a group of 1,000, or do a TED Talk, it's eustress, it's euphoric stress. It's not the false expectations of falling on my face that are appearing real. And I just mind hack myself and say, Panciera, stand down, you goofball. It's just not true, man. It's just not true. Get out there and slay it. Carpe diem. But yeah, it took me a long while. And crazy enough, I went back to the hotel room and I remember distinctly. I said, man, because I played sports, you're younger, you got to hydrate. You got to get some sleep. You got to get some food in you. You got to fuel. And, I just running hard. And I took a nap and I woke up and I said, okay, I feel physically better, but this chatterbox in my mind is going like, what just happened? Was that an outer body experience? And then on and on it went. But now I can share it, David. And I'm telling you, I've shared it with my kids and a select few, and certainly those that were in the audience that day. But what a growing opportunity. So everybody needs to understand that those are the opportunities to really springboard into a new comfort zone from a discomfort zone.
Totally. And so I have some clients who are advisors who typically work primarily with business owners. So they've been building themselves up as thought leaders, and, I've written some books and things like that. And they look super well polished, right? As you look very well polished, like on the TED Talk, for example, that, it will be linked in the show notes that we talked about in the first portion of the podcast. But everyone has a story of their first or second time speaking, how they fell on their face. So
True.
It can be applicable to anything that you're doing, whether it's a presentation to a client or an initial meeting with someone that you just trip and fall over. It's okay. Just keep working through it, go through those self-awareness questions.
Absolutely.
Just have that proper mindset. So before we wrap up, Mark, I do have two would you rather questions.
Absolutely. And P.S., I know during the initial podcast, I left my cell phone number. I shared it with the group, but anybody can call me, 954-684-1650. I'd be happy to step you through, how I sort of walk through the minefield before the mine, MINE field, before I got to the mind field, the Pacific Institute, having that, that user's guide to my mind. So anyway, I'm here to help anyone where needed.
Appreciate that. Because I have an idea as to what I would want. Would you rather have a time machine or a teleporter?
I'm going to show my age, man. What is a teleporter? Oh my God. What is a teleporter? I've never even I don't remember ever seeing Star Trek, nor I think I saw Star Wars with my kid. What is a teleporter?
So you know what a time machine is, right? It brings you back or forward.
Yeah, man.
A teleporter, basically, if I'm like, because you're in Lauderdale right now, if I'm basically like snapping my fingers and say, I want to go from St. Petersburg to Fort Lauderdale, I'll just appear right next to you right now. So you would, in theory, be able to travel anywhere in the world by the snap of your fingers.
The latter, absolutely. Because I would love to be spending FaceTime with you right now and having this real time. I'm all about connection with others. I'm all about the communion of relationships. That is vitally important. Actually, it supports well-being in this, corona dis-ease because of the disease. I'm all about a teleporter. Please, can I have one? Now that I know what the hell it is.
That was my answer as well. All about experiencing life. I feel like if I had a time machine, I'd get stuck trying to fix, certain problems that may not be, fixable throughout time. And I'd rather experience life and, impact people through that way. And when you think about how long it takes to travel in your day-to-day life, never mind your business travel, when things open back up again, save a bunch of time there. So
yeah, man,
it's a real life Zoom meeting, right? You just get to.
I was going to say, I want one of those.
Now, being in Florida, this will be an interesting one. I don't really know what I would do here, but would you rather have a life without air conditioning or never be able to use deodorant?
Without air conditioning.
Really?
Oh, no, wait a second. I would rather not be without air conditioning. The whole deodorant thing, it's sort of natural.
Okay.
and would get over it. So I was jumping on living in Florida because of the hurricanes. About a few hurricane seasons ago, we didn't have electricity for 10 odd days, and it was just misery, man. I can get used to smells, but I can't get used to being miserably hot and uncomfortable. Then the gnats and the flies. No, I want AC.
Well, and as we were talking about before with the celery juice and whatnot, you put good stuff in your body, you have good smells that come out. It's not.
Touche. That's right. Yeah, great. You know what? That's a nice sort of reverse engineering there. I got to remember that. I may be able to get rid of, because I've been drinking green stuff every day. I may be able to ditch the stick.
Well, Mark, I appreciate your time today. For all the listeners out there, thanks for sticking around to the after hours portion. Mark left his phone number. I'll leave mine as a reminder as well. Shoot me a text with a screenshot of a review on iTunes so that I can thank you, as well as put you in the lottery for an experience with what our coaching is like at no cost to you. So that number is 978-228-2338. Again, 978-228-2338. Mark, thank you so much for joining.
I've been honored. Thank you, David. Peace.
Take care, everyone.